March 15, 1944. Japan. Inside the dimly lit communications room of the Japanese Naval Intelligence Headquarters, Commander Atsuzo Kurihara sat before a tangle of radio wires and half-drained cups of bitter tea. For 18 hours, his cryptographers, the best in Japan, had been locked in a silent war against the invisible voice of the Pacific. They were intercepting American Marine transmissions from the Marshall Islands. The sounds, rhythmic and deliberate, refused to yield their meaning. He knew the patterns of military speech, the pulse before an attack, the crisp timing of commands. Yet the words themselves made no sense. It was a language beyond every cipher, beyond their immense archive of Allied codes. For 3 years, Kurihara's men had cracked the secrets of nations. They'd broken the American Purple Code, read British naval reports, even the State Department's confidential cables. But this was something different. Something that defied the science of cryptography itself. What he didn't know, what no Japanese officer could have guessed, was that he was listening to a code built not in laboratories or command posts, but in the deserts of the American Southwest. A language shaped by wind and fire, spoken by a people whose words carried centuries of silence and survival. Long before the Pacific War began, in the wide mesas of Arizona and New Mexico, the Navajo had guarded a language unlike any on Earth. Diné Bizad, the people's language. In 1940, about 170,000 spoke it, nearly all within a 27,000 square mile reservation. To outsiders, it was impenetrable. To linguists, it was a fortress. Its verbs built worlds within a single breath, actions bending through hundreds of prefixes and tones that shifted meaning like light through water. A single sound misplaced could change everything. To a Japanese analyst, trained in a language of 5 vowels, hearing Navajo was like trying to chart a storm by its thunder. But one man understood its hidden strength. Philip Johnston, the son of a missionary, had grown up among the Navajo. By age 9, he was translating sermons. By 15, he'd stood before President Theodore Roosevelt as an interpreter. When Pearl Harbor fell, Johnston saw the unthinkable, a way to use an ancient tongue as America's newest weapon. February 28, 1942, Camp Elliott, California. Johnston gathered 4 Navajo men in a Marine radio tent. They sent messages across the camp while officers timed the results. The Navajos finished in 20 seconds. The cipher machines, the pride of American cryptography, took 30 minutes. Major General Clayton Vogel approved the experiment at once. By May 4, 1942, 29 Navajo recruits, young men from scattered homes across the reservation, took their oaths at Fort Wingate, New Mexico. Some had been punished for speaking their language in boarding schools. Others had never left their sheep camps. Now, under guard in a locked room at Camp Elliott, they built a code inside their own language, something both beautiful and unbreakable. They named ships after the creatures of their homeland. A submarine became Beshlo, Iron Fish, a battleship, Lotso, Whale, a fighter plane, Da He Tihai, Hummingbird, a bomber, Jay-Show, Buzzard. For every letter of the English alphabet, they invented multiple Navajo equivalents: E, elk, ear, eye, egg. The variety destroyed all patterns, every trace a cryptanalyst could follow. No books were written. Everything lived in memory. Chester Nez, one of the original 29, would later recall, "A mistake could cost lives." In our culture, words have power. Speaking correctly was sacred. August 1942, Guadalcanal. 15 Code Talkers landed with the 1st Marine Division. The Japanese had broken Allied codes before. They expected to again. But the new transmissions, clear, rapid, unfathomable, left their intelligence units paralyzed. Lieutenant Kazuo Yamada, educated at Stanford, wrote in disbelief, It sounds like a language. It has rhythm and structure. But it matches nothing known. Not English, not Chinese, not any island tongue. The Japanese recorded hours of the strange voices on wax cylinders. They slowed the sound, charted tones, even consulted monks who studied ancient languages. Nothing worked. On November 8, 1942, code talker Chester Nez sent artillery coordinates for a Japanese machine gun nest. The message took 14 seconds. The Japanese intercepted it instantly and could do nothing. Moments later, shells found their mark. Colonel Haruo Konuma of the 17th Army wrote, "The Americans have deployed a code that defeats every attempt. We are fighting blind." Among the prisoners taken early in the war was a Navajo man named Joe Kiyumiya, captured at Bataan. When Japanese officers realized he spoke Navajo, they thought they'd found their key. They played him the mysterious transmissions. He understood the words, turtle, iron fish, hummingbird, but not their meaning. When he failed to explain, they accused him of defiance. Beatings followed, then torture, cold, hunger. He nearly froze to death in the snow that winter. But even as his body broke, his honesty held. He kept saying the same words, "I understand them, but I don't know what they mean." A Japanese report in May 1943 finally admitted defeat. The prisoner appears native to the mystery language but cannot comprehend messages. Conclusion: either extraordinary resistance or enemy uses specialized code within native language. They were right. By late 1943, Japan abandoned its effort to break the Navajo Code. Major General Alexander Vandegrift wrote, "The Navajo communicators have proven invaluable, faster than any encoding device, absolutely secure." A new school was built at Camp Pendleton. Classes ran every 8 weeks. By war's end, between 375 and 420 Navajo Marines had served as code talkers in every major Pacific campaign. Their training was relentless, sending messages while running, wearing gas masks, shouting through the roar of artillery recordings. Thomas Begay, who enlisted at 15, said, "They pushed us beyond possible. Lives depended on our accuracy." The code evolved as the war did. A kamikaze became Neta, death wind. The atomic bomb, Ayeshi, metal egg. By mid-1943, the Japanese Navy assigned 30 analysts to the problem. They tried everything: musical analysis, linguistic mapping, even oscilloscopes. Still, nothing. The Imperial Army began offering 10,000 yen, a decade's pay, for the capture of a Navajo radio operator alive. Not one was ever taken. November 1943, Tarawa. 6 code talkers landed with the Marines under a rain of fire. For 76 hours, they kept the lifeline of communication alive. Lloyd Oliver transmitted for nearly 2 full days without sleep. His voice the steady pulse connecting the beach to the ships offshore. When the battle ended, the messages they'd sent had guided every barrage, every landing wave. Not a single error. During the Marianas Campaign, 24 code talkers worked around the clock on Saipan. Lieutenant Commander Takashi Harukawa, who once prided himself on anticipating Allied movements, wrote bitterly, "When the Marines began using the strange language, our intelligence went dark." The same story repeated on Peleliu. In the chaos of a counterattack, Jimmy King stayed at his radio for 6 hours after his partner was killed beside him. He called artillery from 3 battalions, sending 40 flawless messages under direct fire. Each word, each tone, a bridge between chaos and control. February 19, 1945, Iwo Jima. Before dawn, the sea boiled with ships, more than 100. The beach was death waiting. In the command post, Major Howard Connor knew that the invasion's success depended on 6 men. 6 Navajo code talkers who would direct every landing, every strike, every request for aid. For 48 straight hours, those 6 Marines sent and received over 800 messages. Not one mistake. Every coordinate, every command, perfectly clear, perfectly secure. General Kuribayashi's great defensive plan relied on intercepting American signals, but the signals that came through the Pacific air were indecipherable. Major Connor later said, "Were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima." In those 2 days, the difference between victory and slaughter lay in the time it took to speak. Through the code, artillery requests that once required half an hour took 20 seconds. It was the speed of survival. April 1945, Okinawa. 35 code talkers joined the largest Pacific assault. 183,000 troops over 82 days. The Japanese tried jamming the frequencies, even imitating the voices they heard. But as code talker Alfred Newman remembered, their Navajo sounded like someone gargling while trying to talk. On August 14, 1945, word came through the radios. Teddy Draper spoke the words that ended the war. Ne hema adigini adanil. Japan has surrendered. The message, fittingly, went first through Navajo. When the fighting stopped, the truth of what Japan had faced began to surface. Lieutenant General Seizo Arisue, Japan's chief of intelligence, admitted, "We never broke the Marine Code. We broke Army, Air Force, diplomatic traffic, but the Marine Tactical Code was completely secure." Captain Yasuji Kawamoto added, "For 3 years we recorded thousands of transmissions. Our best linguists worked day and night. Nothing succeeded. It was our greatest cryptanalytic failure. Some analysts had suspected the language was Native American. They'd even requested help from German experts. But it was too late, and the Germans knew nothing of Navajo." Colonel Masao Yamada later reflected, "Inability to read Marine communications cost thousands of lives. Every American operation after 1942 began in mystery." Major Hiroshi Tanaka, who fought at Iwo Jima, said quietly, "We could not understand their words. It made us feel primitive, defeated before the battle even began." But the end of the war didn't bring peace for the code talkers. Their mission remained classified. They returned home to reservations still denied the vote. New Mexico and Arizona until 1948, Utah until 1957. Hotels turned them away. Restaurants refused to serve them. They were heroes forbidden to speak of their heroism. Chester Nez, the last of the original 29, would write, "We were warriors who helped win the war, but couldn't tell anyone. The burden was heavy." Many turned to the Enemy Way ceremony, a Navajo ritual to cleanse the spirit after battle. Dan Erkey remembered, "We had used our language to direct death. We needed it again for healing." For 2 decades, silence held their story captive. 1968, the code declassified. The truth could finally be told. A year later, the first public recognition came at a Marine reunion. Then, in 1982, President Reagan declared August 14th National Navajo Code Talkers Day. The highest honor arrived on July 26, 2001, when President George W. Bush presented the Congressional Gold Medal to the surviving originals. Only 5 of the 29 were still alive to receive it. Bush said, "Today we honor 29 Native Americans who gave their country a service only they could give." Chester Nez replied, "We were ordinary men given an extraordinary task. We used our sacred language to help win the war. The Navajos weren't alone. 14 other tribes lent their voices: Choctaw, Comanche, Hopi, Cherokee, Lakota, and more. The 2008 Code Talkers Recognition Act honored them all. John Brown, Jr. said simply, "They told us our language was no good. Then they needed it to win the war." Their code did more than protect lives. It changed how America saw its first peoples, and how they saw themselves. Dr. William Morgan wrote, "They proved our languages aren't primitive. They showed Navajo could express anything. from prayers to warfare. Their living code had outlasted every machine, every cipher, every empire. Even now, in a world of quantum computers and artificial intelligence, the lesson endures. The strongest encryption is human. Colonel David Hatch summarized it best. They achieved something unique, a code never broken, never compromised. Proof that human language can exceed mechanical encryption. Years later, Japanese scholars revisited their failure with quiet admiration. Captain Minoru Yamada confessed, "By 1943, we knew it was Native American. But which one? We could never tell." Lieutenant Commander Shigeru Fukumoto added, "Using a native language was so simple, so elegant. We never thought of it." Photographer Kenji Kawano in the 1990s traveled across the reservations, capturing the faces of aging code talkers. His exhibitions in Tokyo and Hiroshima drew silence and respect. At one event, code talker Albert Smith told his former enemies, "We were both warriors. My language helped defeat you. But now, it helps us understand each other." In 2010, Japan's own intelligence historians acknowledged the truth. The Navajo Code was perfect. Humanly perfect. When Chester Nez died on June 4, 2014, only 2 code talkers remained from the 400 who had once carried radios through fire and sand. Peter MacDonald, still speaking at 96, told audiences, "We showed that America's strength comes from diversity, from many voices, many cultures, one purpose." The language once punished in schools now echoed in classrooms as pride. Young Navajos learned it not as a relic, but as a legacy. Dr. Jennifer Dennett-Dale said, "They proved our languages are not museum pieces. They are living resources." The Navajo Code Talkers achieved what no cipher ever had. A code born of culture, unbroken by war, eternal in spirit. Because the deeper truth was never just military. It was human. Men who once faced discrimination used their own identity to defend the very nation that denied it. Their language, their difference, became America's strength. And when the Japanese finally admitted they had failed, they had, without knowing, recognized a larger truth, that some codes cannot be broken, because they are made not of numbers, but of people. The Navajo Code Talkers sent messages their enemies never decoded, but the greatest message they carried was for the future. Diversity brings strength, culture brings power, and the many voices of one nation, united yet distinct, form the unbreakable code of freedom itself.